first session of the G20, a session which is basically underway in Brazil. A short while back, the Prime Minister's images also came in. Remember the big agenda after the session that took place in India with regards to giving voice to the global south, an extension of what we see right now in the G20. These are the latest images now coming in from Brazil. Prime Minister seated next to President Joe Biden. Remember, this would be perhaps the last G20 summit for President Biden. And as the session essentially begins, would be looking into multiple challenges that the multilateral forum basically faces at this point in time with the changes in administration like the United States of America. And how exactly would the world be tackling with two key issues that they're looking at?
All right, these are pictures coming in of the first session, the plenary at the Rio de Janeiro Convention Center, where the G20 Leaders Summit is taking place. And Prime Minister arrived about 12 hours back at the Galeão International Airport, was received, given a grand welcome, and now he's part of the summit itself. In fact, what we are seeing panning out is the launch of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. In fact, it is an initiative that goes back to India's presidency last year. That's when the framework was set up. In the pictures, you see all the world leaders, Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister Modi there with Ajay Bagga, the World Bank president, and other leaders in quick succession. We are seeing as we flip through these frames coming in from the G20 summit venue in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And India is Prime Minister there sitting next to Joe Biden, the US president, the outgoing US president. And this summit is taking place at a very important time in world geopolitics, and a transition of leadership happening in the United States. The war in Europe are continuing. In fact, there has been an increased intensity that we have seen over the last 1 week. And India is part of the Troika, which is the past president and the present president of G20, which is Brazil, and the next president, which is going to be Saudi Arabia, I believe. And so all these three nations constituting the Troika, there is going to be a session dedicated to the themes spearheaded by these three nations. And after this launch event of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, immediately after that, there is the first session, which is again on fight against hunger and poverty, and which is going to last for about 2.5 hours. That really gives you an idea of the kind of focus that the G20 leaders have this time on the issue of hunger and, of course, poverty eradication. After which the leaders would be closeted for an hour for a working lunch, and which would be served in the plenary room itself, we are being told, which means that the summit itself is chock-a-block with sessions that the leaders have no time to sort of go in a retreat and have a leisurely lunch. After that, there is a session on reform of the institutions of global governance, in which we are going to discuss, in the pictures, Prime Minister having a light-hearted conversation with Joe Biden. Earlier we saw pictures of President Xi Jinping. Remember, Chinese president skipped the G20 summit in New Delhi last year, but is there in Brazil. And India is also part of BRICS with Brazil and China, and of course, Russia and South Africa. We have Cyril Ramaphosa, the South African president there, having a chat, three-way chat between President Biden, South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, and Prime Minister Modi there. You can see Anthony Albanese behind them, and behind Prime Minister Modi is External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, Justin Trudeau loitering around somewhere, and these are pictures coming in from Rio de Janeiro. So the second session After lunch is on reforms of the global institutions of governance, and that is going to go on for about an hour and a half, after which there is time fixed for bilateral meetings of about 2 hours, in which Prime Minister would be engaging with these world leaders one-on-one. Then there is time again slotted for bilateral meetings. So effectively, from about 3:30 p.m. Brazil time to 7 p.m., 4 hours slated for bilateral meetings, and that would wrap up the day insofar as the G20 summit is concerned for tonight. Brazil is about 8.5 hours behind in the Indian Standard Time, the Brazil time or the Rio de Janeiro time. And so what the pictures we are getting now, it is about 7:30 p.m. India time. So it should be about 11 a.m. Brazil time. And these are pictures coming in from the first session, the plenary, where the leaders gathered. Remember the kind of leadership India provided to G20 with a significant focus on global south. And the G20 Troika actually is India, Brazil, and South Africa, and that's why you're seeing Cyril Ramaphosa in that animated conversation with Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. It's interesting, the seating arrangement where Prime Minister is sitting next to the US President, or the US President sitting next to Indian Prime Minister, and Prime Minister, of course, sitting next to the present chair, which is Brazil, and President Lula da Silva there. The kind of leadership India provided to G20 with a focus on global south, the prioritization of global south, which saw African Union, the AU, becoming a member of G20 with its 52 members, 52 member states, and this is the first time that African Union is part of the G20 as a full-fledged member. Other leaders there in the pictures, these are world leaders. So apart from the G20 nations, which is now G21 with African Union a member, there are international organizations that participate. So for example, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations Secretary General is supposed to be there, and all these leaders deliberate on the global geopolitical, geostrategic, and geoeconomic situation. It would be interesting how the present G20 Leaders Summit responds to the ongoing wars, one in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, the other in West Asia between Israel and Hamas. We'll keep close track of the developments there and keep bringing to you those pictures from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, where the G20 Leaders Summit is taking place. Moving on for now, coming back home and to Manipur.